should we have a look at some of the big movies to get our teeth into as we head towards Friday, about 3:30ish. Well, it's just gone 20 past 3, I suppose, but around this time, we're pedantic about it. On a Thursday, we like to have a look at what to watch across the weekend. Let's do that right now with our film man, Van. Van, hello there, sir.
And hello to you as well, Darryl.
How are you, my man? You okay?
All good. It's been a good week for films. I can't possibly complain.
Good. Excellent. We've got a few to get through, so let's crack on with The Beautiful Day in the Neighbourhood, which is Tom Hanks, is that right?
That's right. It's Tom Hanks and Matthew Rhys from that TV series, The Americans. Tom Hanks is playing the supporting role in this one. It's more Matthew Rhys' story. And he is a journalist. This is loosely based on a true story, on a real article anyway, of a journalist who was sent to profile the popular US children's TV host Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers, as we know him, in the famous red cardigan who would entertain the children on public access in the morning. The reporter, Vogel, comes from something of a troubled background with his own father, and he starts to see sort of this charismatic, almost angelic figure in Mr. Rogers, but can't quite figure out if he's on the level, if he's not, and it starts to affect the issues within his own life. He's become a father as well, and it's really about this cynic meeting this sort of saintly figure and the dynamic that falls between them. I've got a clip for you of them starting to get to know one another.
This piece will be for an issue about heroes. Do you consider yourself a hero?
I don't think of myself as a hero. No, not at all.
What about Mr. Rogers? Is he a hero?
I don't understand the question.
Well, there's you, Fred, and then there's the character you play, Mr. Rogers.
You said it was a play at the plate. Is that what happened to you?
I'm here to interview you, Mr. Rogers.
Well, that is what we're doing, isn't it?
A Beautiful Day in the Neighbourhood. Great potential here, Van, for some really, really rich characters.
The minute you heard that Tom Hanks was going to play Mr. Rogers, you kind of knew it was going to be brilliant. Yeah. And I'm very happy to say that it is brilliant. I grew up in a completely other country anyway, so I have some childhood experience of seeing Mr. Rogers on TV, and I have a bit of a sort of a personal connection to seeing that. I watched the documentary a few years ago, Won't You Be My Neighbour, which was astounding and an absolute tearjerker. I think Tom Hanks is perfectly cast, as you would have expected. I think the film is brilliantly written. I think it's very well directed by Marielle Heller, who directed Diary of a Teenage Girl a few years ago. It's got this clever gimmick where they use the actual sort of children's TV style sets for like the cityscapes, so when they do establishing shots, it kind of goes to these cardboard buildings and things. Right. Matthew Rhys is very good in the lead. I thought it was a genuinely brilliant drama. It was very moving, very affecting. I can't recommend it highly enough.
So, just tell us a little bit about Fred Rogers then, and who he was.
So, Fred Rogers was a Presbyterian minister with a degree in child psychology who discovered that television was going to become a thing. And he thought, well, this wonderful new invention could be a very convenient way to actually help children. And he basically sort of pioneered the what we now refer to really as the CBeebies format. But, before Sesame Street, before all that stuff, he was the original children's TV figure, and there's generations of Americans now who have grown up with it, grew up with the late Fred Rogers. He's been not been with us for, I think, 15, 16 years now, but he basically sort of became the icon of so many American childhoods, that he was this beloved figure. As we see him in the film, he's interviewed by people like Johnny Carson, Oprah Winfrey, people like that. Yeah, and there's a wonderful documentary about him called Won't You Be My Neighbour, which is on DVD, I think on Amazon Prime or Netflix now. Absolutely unmissable. Do check that out if you don't know who he is. It's a wonderful documentary. But the whole thing with Fred Rogers was always, could he possibly be as saintly a man as he was depicted to be? And the answer seemingly is yes.
But a very tasty premise for an article and be a film about it as well, right? I mean, that is something we have something really fascinated about that, don't we? I think is these television personalities. What are they really like when you peel back the makeup and you get under their skin?
Absolutely. I've been trying to make the comparison. I'm trying to find a comparison this past week for in Britain. Who can we quite come up with that could compare to Mr. Rogers, like in terms of what he meant to the kids? And well, if I'll be really honest, Timmy Mallet doesn't quite compare, you know, or I mean, we can't really say Jimmy Savile anymore.
No, but actually,
you know, I mean,
but Jimmy Savile actually, yeah. There's not many to go on, is there?
No, we've got a really bad track record in this country, haven't we?
Yeah, but actually, Jimmy Savile was that, wasn't he? I mean, let's sort of go back to the Jimmy Savile that we knew before the revelations about his behaviour.
Yeah.
What was always really, really interesting about Jimmy Savile was what was he really like? I mean, there was the Louis Theroux documentary that sort of probably came the closest, didn't it, in its era, to getting to cracking beneath the surface and finding out what Jimmy Savile was really like. He was an enigma. He was full of secrets.
Well, that's the thing, and the idea that we're presented with in the case of Fred Rogers is, in actuality, no, he just was that man. As he says in the clip, he doesn't consider himself a hero. He doesn't consider himself this saintly figure. He just considered himself a man, and he poured himself. The film is really great. I mean, A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, I mean, the film is really great in depicting what were actual instances of himself just delaying productions and just making people wait simply so that he could, you know, deal with sort of charity cases and spend time with sick kids and things like that. Just really happened upon. And there's a wonderful sequence where Tom Hanks is on a subway train with Matthew Rhys, and a whole group, I think it's a group of school kids, all just band together with everyone else in the subway car, and they all just start singing the iconic "Won't You Be My Neighbour" tune. And it is just this wonderfully affecting cultural moment in the film. It's a genuinely beautiful scene.
Very sweet, very, very sweet. Okay, that's out this weekend, is it, Van?
It's out on Friday, as is Richard Jewell and Queen and Slim.
Great. Richard Jewell, then. Let's talk about that.
So Richard Jewell is new film from Clint Eastwood in his later years directorial role that he has taken on. This stars Paul Walter Hauser, who I think most of us would know from I, Tonya, really, unless you happen to watch the Karate Kid spin-off series Cobra Kai, which I do, and it's awesome. This is the story of Richard Jewell, imaginatively enough, who was the security guard at the Olympic Games in Atlanta in the 90s during the attempt, well, I'd say the attempt at the actual bombing. He's the guy who found the bomb. And if you remember the story, the scandal that very quickly emerged around that was the FBI and the media immediately tried to present him as the primary suspect in said bombing. I've got a clip for you of just what happens when this focused and targeted investigation starts to take a toll on Richard and his family. It's voiced here by Kathy Bates, who has been nominated for an Oscar for this, giving a press conference asking for just a little space.
The media has portrayed my son as the person who has committed this crime. They have taken all privacy from us. They have taken all peace. The FBI follows his every move and watches my home constantly. And why? My son is innocent. Mr. President, please clear my son's name.
Wow. Kathy Bates being as brilliant as ever in Richard Jewell. There's again, I suppose, Van, a nice opportunity here to really get into some characters.
That's the case. Now, this does get into the character, and it does a very good job with it. I think that Paul Walter Hauser is superbly cast. I mean, he happens to look an awful lot like the real Richard Jewell anyway. The thing with the film is, although it does that character stuff very well, and I do say that specifically in the case of Richard Jewell himself, also his lawyer, who's played by Sam Rockwell, and Kathy Bates, as well as the mother figure. The thing is, the film does drop the ball rather substantially and takes something of a rather nasty turn as regards the role of a female reporter played by Olivia Wilde. And the problem you've got here is that there's been some controversy around it. The woman herself was in no way like that. And it does seem to be quite a misogynistic sense of scapegoating going on. The film itself, though, it's good. It's not bad. It's not particularly great. It does this thing where it could so easily make a grander point about the responsibility of the media in journalism, the responsibility of checking your facts, of being thorough. And the problem is that it, for lack of a better term, it wusses out of doing that. I mean, in this day and age as well, the time is very, very ripe for this story, especially in the last 2 or 3 years. A crucial story to tell, I would say. But it just doesn't go there, and you can't help but feel that is such a waste of potential the whole time. It's the Olivia Wilde character that just feels unpleasant throughout it. And that's without knowing. I mean, I didn't know the controversy until after the film, and I still found there's something very unpleasant about the way this character is depicted. Having said that, there's some decent support. John Hamm turns up in it, for instance, and Kathy Bates. I don't know if I think she deserves that Oscar nomination, but I do think it's a great performance.
Okay. There's always it is a shame, actually, Van, to hear that it hasn't gone so far as making that point, especially when there's some really brave films like Bombshell out there at the moment, making really important points and depicting very important stories in a way that's kind of accurate and drills into the heart of them in the way that does. The other thing as well is whenever you're doing something, this is the line that Bombshell has to toe as well, is that whenever you're telling the story of somebody and something who've this is already a story about somebody being depicted inaccurately, isn't it? You would think that the very least that the makers of the film would do is make an effort to make sure that what they were doing were depicting people and the story as accurately as possible. But when you've got a narrative to follow, that can be very hard.
I've got a bit of a theory on this one.
Yeah.
Just hear me out on this one, because it's a little out there, but I think it makes sense. Now, you need to consider for a second who Clint Eastwood is. He is one of the oldest living active in the film community Republicans currently on the scene, right? Uh-huh. He has depicted through this movie a story about how the liberal media, led by an evil white lady, tried to destroy a heroic working-class white man.
Right. Okay.
I think you could read into that. To be honest, I think you could read that into it if you wanted to. Just not saying that is it. I'm just saying you could.
Yes, fair enough. Also, the Titanic lover in me is very pleased to see Kathy Bates and Leonardo DiCaprio's name attached to the same film as well. Again, love it. He's on as a producer, isn't he? I think on that.
Yeah.
Okay, Richard Jewell, Queen and Slim, Van.
Queen and Slim, brace yourself because this one's an absolute belter.
Okay.
This is a film about an African-American couple who go on a first date. Now, I'm not sure quite what his job role is meant to be. I think she's a lawyer in some capacity. They're relatively young, sort of in their mid to late 20s couple. They go on a Tinder date. And on the way home from the Tinder date, they are pulled over by a particularly antsy, very racist copper who oversteps the mark. Things get a little out of hand. The next thing you know, she has a bullet in her, and he has shot the policeman in self-defense to protect her. Wow. They find themselves on the run, and by doing this, they find themselves, and this is kind of the inverse of Richard Jewell in a strange way, they find themselves depicted within the media as this couple who have gone on a crusade to avenge injustices, because it so happens that the police officer they shot had previously been involved in the case of the possibly accidental, possibly malicious death of a young African-American man that has been perceived to be police brutality. So they're seen as avenging angels. The idea is they simply want to flee the country, but everywhere they go, they're recognized, and people either hound them or want to protect them. I've got a clip for you.
You're a black man that killed a cop and then took his gun.
I'm not a criminal.
You are now.
I just want to go home. And I want to see my family.
If you turn yourself in, you will never see them again. All we can do is go forward. There is nothing back there for us. Please. Let's just keep going.
Oof, okay, very intense, very heavy subject matter as well, Van.
It is. This is the new one from director Melina Masoukas. It stars Daniel Kaluuya and Jodie Turner-Smith as the central couple. I will say, I think this is absolutely terrific. I didn't know what to expect from this. I had heard it was good. I'd seen the trailer in passing. I thought, okay, it looks vaguely interesting. I suppose, I'll go along. At worst, I'll probably get a half-decent drama. But I was blown away. Genuinely blown away by this. I was like I say, absolutely terrific. Really powerful. As you can tell from that sort of plot synopsis, there's a sort of a political poignancy to it. It's very moving. At times, it's even quite a romantic story. But it's all about those two. It's all about Daniel Kaluuya. And Daniel Kaluuya has this streak going on at the moment where he seems to be able to just pick these zeitgeisty but still kind of entertaining projects that he gets to be brilliant. And you look at things like Get Out and Widows in particular, the Steve McQueen movie from last year that I still think was robbed at the Oscars by just not even getting nominated for half the stuff. And then you've got Jodie Turner-Smith, and to be honest, I didn't know where I knew her from. It turned out I'd been watching her in a TV show for like 2 years. I just didn't recognize her because very different character. But she impresses kind of equally here as well. I think it's a very clever script. I think there's a lot of sort of a good sense of balance in the writing. It's a very measured script. The direction it's lean, but it's imaginative. I really had a great time with it. I think it's an absolute must-see. I think if you're going to see anything this weekend, obviously people will immediately flock to A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood because it's a Tom Hanks movie and it's got its Oscar nominations. But I think if you want the left field choice, this is it. See this one. I think you'll be genuinely impressed. It has something to say. It is about something. It's something you will be talking about for weeks to come afterwards. I would say don't miss it.
Great. Also, Jodie Turner-Smith was, I think she was in Zayn Malik's Pillow Talk video as well. There you go. There's the music radio jock coming at me there, Van. See, you never lose it. You never lose it.
Better you than I, sir. I wouldn't possibly know about Zayn Malik's musical career.
You can leave music radio, but it never leaves you, Van. That's the important thing to remember. Always a pleasure, sir. Let's do it again. Thank you very much.
Till the next time.
Frank Connor, film reviewer on Talk Radio this morning, 20 to 4.